you also had this Twitter thread that was getting a lot of action just the other day, and you said the word you cannot say as a man in a relationship, which is...
I know what word it is.
Which one is it?
Submit.
Yes.
Yes.
So why do you think that caused such a stir?
Oh, well, first of all, I believe it 100%. Second of all, it was a little trolly too. I know that this is a way to get people's reaction. And the context is I was talking about my engagement, and again, all the reasons why we got married or getting married. And one of them, one of the tweets was that she has submitted to me willfully. I've asked it of her, and she's given it. And it sounds so much more dramatic than it really is. But how far back do I want to go with this? When I very first started writing online anonymously, I wrote a lot about sex and relationships. And one of the things I did write about was like dominant, submissive relationships. And part of the reason that I was so interested in exploring that and writing about it is because I felt like it was a natural dynamic that people have definitely pushed to the side. People have disregarded hierarchies. They've disregarded the differences biologically and emotionally between men and women. And they've disregarded the nature of leadership. And I wrote a lot about dominance and submission in a totally sexual context, in that most women find, I think, and in my experience, but maybe I'm just like a magnet for it, that they enjoy being submissive to the right man. It's not about being submissive to men. It's about submitting to a benevolent leader, someone who cares about you and who's willing to put in the extra effort and to engage the duty of care and protection and provision. And it can be kinky if that's like not your day-to-day life. But for us, it is our day-to-day life, and she wants it. I want it. It is the more natural nature, like way for us to interact. And it's not about dominating somebody, right? It's about being a leader, right? It's about, I call it a benevolent dictatorship, right? It's thoughtful stewardship. It's ultimately making decision and setting the agenda, but consulting along the way. So on our first date, we went out and we're looking at the menus, and I'm like, so what do you think you're going to want to get? And she's like, I'll have the fish or whatever. Like, that sounds good. And the waiter comes over. I'm like, hey, how's it going? She'll have the fish and I'll have the steak. Boom. Leadership. It appears as though that I was being dominant over her, but really I had asked her what she wanted in the first place, and I just took the lead in telling the waiter. She loved it. Well, tells the story all the time. But it's not about me just deciding what she's going to have for dinner. It's about listening and engaging. And in order to be good at this type of dynamic, the dominant person needs to be very empathetic. You need to be able to observe and appreciate body language and subtle signals, and whether or not somebody's actually telling the truth. Like, not to be, maliciously deceptive, but like if they're being honest with themselves, or if they're just telling you kind of what they think that you want to hear. You have to be able to decipher all this stuff. So like, this is not an easier route, right? There's more responsibility. You have to be more engaged. It has to be more thoughtful. If you don't, then you're just you're just a beast. You're just like a scumbag. But this is much more nuanced. And then I use the word in the context of marriage also to allude to sort of Christian values, which I'm not necessarily Christian. I do appreciate them. But it was a multi-layered tweet, which is why it got so much attention. Now, I wrote a piece way long ago that I got in trouble for, where I described and encouraged feminists to seek out a dominant to help them get their head right.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And even to seek out role-playing circumstances in which, the R word comes into play, right? Rape. But all consensual, all just role play, all just exploration. And I wrote it because feminists don't think that women have agency. They get upset. They're like, women can do whatever they want as long as it's these things that we tell them to do. And when a woman acts with agency to do something else, feminists freak out. So the point of the article was very trolly on one hand. On the other hand, yes, I do believe a good dominant can help a feminist see the light. But it actually got me into trouble. When I got doxxed, my employer found that post, and like in our deposition with the lawyers and everything, they're like reading this article that I wrote anonymously about rough sex and choking women and like consensual consent. What do they call it now? Consensual non-consent. That's too much for me. That's too many words. But there they are reading this thing out loud to me in a deposition with like $1,000 worth of lawyers there. And I'm like, I can't believe this is my life. But there it was. So yeah, I use the word submit. I mean it. She means it. It'll be part of our vows. And the complement to that is duty. I have a duty. I have a duty to protect and to provide and to care. And to help build the life and to look out for her and to take her thoughts into consideration and to be thinking about her at all times. So it's an exchange. It's a consensual power exchange. It is not unilateral. It's not forceful unless you decide on that. It's just, it's the natural way for me.
Yeah, you're not like a tyrant about it. There's an interesting study. So one of my girlfriends, she's a neuroscientist and she's studied sex and she spent a lot of her time actually studying kink. What's interesting is the more feminist a woman was, like the more she believed in that, like the bigger and badder and more, for lack of better words, alpha the dudes that she would seek out were. And she's like, there's something there. It's almost like you need someone to be able to kind of check whatever level that you're at. And there was a time, probably not too far in the past, where if I saw something like that, where someone was like, you have to submit, or, marriage isn't an equal partnership. Like, I mean, it is, but like you're both leading the marriage. I would have been like, that's misogynist and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just as powerful, if not more powerful. And like, there was just so much masculine energy coming from this little person. And there was actually like a little bit of residual hanging out there that I didn't even realize until like my husband and I are constantly going to like retreats and like training things just to constantly be growing together and like have someone else from the outside looking in saying, this is how you can improve. And like, this is where we see seams in the relationship and like, let's fortify that. So we did this thing called Principal Savage, and it's the coolest thing I've ever done to date. So really badass special ops trainer and a really badass psychologist. And you have a knife on you, you have live ammo on you, you're doing obstacle courses and like shooting courses and fighting off, 200-pound dudes that come at you. And they'll break down psychologically why you did what you did. They'll see how him and I work as a couple. And they challenged me on that. Like there was this little part after one of the trainings, and like the days are super long and you have like these fireside chats. So they're like, you have to say, what are the lines to him? Like, you are my king. I will follow you anywhere. And there was a third one. Oh, and I belong to you.
Oh, solid.
Holy cow, was that hard for me to say. And
to
I
your
was like,
husband.
I know. And I was like, why is this here? And I had just gotten done with like this neurofeedback training a couple weeks prior, and they also challenged me on like the feminine and masculine energy, and they were saying like I'm presenting too masculine and that's hurting the relationship. And I was like, what are they talking about? And this comes up again. And I was like, wow, there's something here. So this is in front of a group of people, and I'm being asked to be so vulnerable and like work this out, right? Like, well, why am I hesitating? Why is there a lump in my throat? And it's because I felt like I was losing some kind of agency by that. Like, I was no longer his equal if I said that. And that's not the case, right? It's not that we're not equals, but you do have to have a designated leader. And that's the reason that most successful companies don't have two CEOs. You might have a COO, right? So they're also very important and have a lot to do. Just like you're saying, your fiance wife helps run like your events and scheduling, and she has like a very important role. So it's not to say that you don't matter, but it's to say when it comes down to it, someone has to take the lead. And then you, for some reason with me, I was like, well, why can't it be me? And I know that that's ridiculous. And I talked it through with my husband. He's like, okay, well, because I do agree. I think it's supposed to be him. But let's say there's a zombie apocalypse, right? Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know the first thing about the generator. I'm not going to be able to fight off bad guys. Like, I'm not going to be able to protect our location. Like, there's all of these things that I'm going to rely on him for. And it's not to say I'm useless, but who am I going to fall back on? And I would hope that it's me falling back on him and not the other way. Otherwise, we're fucked.
Right. Well, the biology has so much to do with it, right? Size. I'm designed to kill bad guys and animals, right? And so let's put me where I can specialize in my highest and best use. I read the other day and I tweeted it. We protect women because they protect everything else. So there's, you're protecting my children and the home and all these things that are like so important. And part of the problem is that feminism has degraded the value of housekeeping and house management and loving family and being dedicated to creating time and events and meals and gatherings, etc., and creating a home. It's been denigrated. Masculine ideals were put forth as the new feminine ideals. If women could only just be more like men, no. And we're learning that, and we're seeing how it doesn't play out in the long term. And we're seeing how women who believe that are unhappy when they seek out a man that they feel like they could be an equal to physically and in every way. That old commercial, anything you can do, I can do better. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. But I can't do a lot of things that she can do, right?